All right. What I want to do in this brief 10-minute lecture is to explore some of the questions and topics and issues within the field of philosophy known as epistemology. Let's first start out with a definition. Epistemology comes from the Greek word episteme, which means knowledge, and logos, which means study of. Putting the two together, then, we can say that epistemology is the study of human knowledge. Some typical epistemological questions one might ask and that various philosophers explore include questions such as, what is the nature of knowledge? That is to say, what does it mean to say that someone knows something or that someone doesn't know something? This is a matter of understanding what knowledge is. And as philosophers, we want to be able to distinguish between knowledge and opinion. Right? When can we be confident that we really have knowledge as opposed to opinion? Or what does it mean to say that I know something? Or again, what's the difference between knowledge and opinion? Or what about the extent of human knowledge? I mean, it's one thing to give a definition as to the nature of knowledge, but it's a whole nother issue to investigate the extent of human knowledge, or how far human knowledge can take us. Is the human mind essentially infallible? Right? Can we know everything that there is to know? Or are there some things that we cannot know? And then the question becomes, how do we know that we cannot know those things? Or can we achieve certainty? Right? Can the mind give us that 100% certainty that we often seek? These are all many questions that epistemologists would explore. Okay, so those are some of the questions that epistemologists would explore. But what about some of the issues that divide philosophers when it comes to the study of epistemology? Well, traditionally, there have been two different camps or two different schools of thought when it comes to this question. Continental rationalism on the one hand, and British empiricism on the other. Continental rationalism is typically associated with thinkers such as René Descartes, Baruch Spinoza, and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, all of whom we will discuss at varying lengths throughout the course. Essentially, continental rationalists, although there are differences between them, and there are other continental rationalists as well that I didn't mention, but essentially they agree that we can know things by reason itself. Continental rationalists often will accept innate ideas or a priori truths. Now, I got a slide on innate ideas, so I'm briefly going to pass over it now. But just to give you something to hold on to for the time being, an innate idea essentially an idea that is part of the mind at birth. An idea that's part of the mind at birth. It's not acquired through experience. It's not derived through sense perception, the way we derive some facts, but it's simply part of the mind structure that the mind has at birth. And rationalists, for many reasons, tend to agree that there is some sort of hardwiring of the mind that allows it to think in terms of these ideas. And I'll have more to say about this as we go. Continental rationalists were heavily influenced by mathematics, and they used mathematics as a model to achieve certainty. And in particular, they focused on geometry. The way in geometry that we often start with axioms and definitions and then attempt to deduce from those axioms and definitions other truths about the nature of shapes and so on. Well, continental rationalists really liked that model. First and foremost, because it provides us with certainty, and secondly, it's a very ordered process. In other words, one is less likely to make a mistake if they follow the geometric method. And lastly, continental rationalists heavily relied upon the use of what's known in philosophy as a method, or a set of rules that guide the reasoning process. And in a future lecture, we will look at Rene Descartes' systematic doubting method that he used to arrive at truth. Now, the British empiricists, on the other hand, are typically associated with John Locke, George Berkeley, and the Scottish philosopher David Hume. Notice that their title or their classification is British empiricism. These thinkers tended to come from Great Britain. So Berkeley was from Ireland, Hume was from Scotland, and Locke himself was from England, as opposed to the continental rationalists who were mainly from continental Europe. Descartes residing from France, Spinoza from Amsterdam, and Leibniz from Germany. Now, in contrast to the rationalists, the empiricists think that we know things primarily by experience. So it's not so much through reason as it is our experience of something. Thus, for example, if I want to know what hot is, an empiricist would say that I have to feel or touch or taste something that's hot. In other words, I have to have an experience of something that's hot in order for me to have an idea of hotness. The British empiricists are also united in the notion that the mind is what Locke called a tabula rasa, or a blank slate. That is to say, according to British empiricism, the mind is simply blank at birth. You can think of it as a white piece of paper with nothing written on it. It's completely empty. And over time, as we begin to experience and to sense different things, that blank piece of paper becomes filled up with different facts, different experiences, different sets of data that give the mind actual content. Okay, so this is a big difference between British empiricism and continental rationalism. The rationalists accepted this notion of innate ideas, that the mind at birth really does have content or ideas within the mind, although we might not be aware of those yet. The empiricists take the exact opposite approach. They argue that there's nothing on the mind whatsoever, and that whatever comes to be on the mind must do so through experience. In other words, we could say that knowledge, according to the empiricists, is a posteriori, that is, it comes after experience. So experience will be a very, very important factor in British empiricism. Likewise, along those lines, science, experience, observation, and experimentation would play a very important role in the development of British empiricism. As opposed to the rationalists who focused more on mathematics and logic, the empiricists were heavily influenced by scientific reasoning, observation, induction, right, where we begin with particular data and then try to formulate a general theory that accounts for the particular data. Okay, so these are some of the major differences between continental rationalism and British empiricism, and all of them in one way or another get back to the question of epistemology. How do we know? What is the nature of our knowledge? What is the extent of our knowledge? So we will be pursuing many of these questions and many of these topics throughout this section of the course. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview in this video of some of the questions epistemology deals with, as well as a couple of the different theories or schools of thought when it comes to epistemology. Okay, that's enough for now. I will talk to you next time. Thank you.